Good morning and welcome to CHCAGE005, which is provide support to people living with dementia. So our objectives of this unit is to discover how to prepare and provide support to those affected by dementia. We need to know how we can communicate appropriately with these clients, and we need to provide the correct stimulation of activities towards these clients meeting their needs and depending on which stage they're through their dementia process. So apply person-centered care approaches to all interactions with the person living with dementia. So if you can hone in on your client's interests, their preference, their likes, get to know them as much as you possibly can. Now this can change from one day to the next. They will have a completely different life story, and so therefore you just need to jump into that moment while you're communicating with that client and just discuss about their interests in that moment. So one day they could be interested in fishing, and they'll have a life story on how they went out on charter boats and worked in big fishing rigs, and they'll have all the stories under the sun to do with fishing. And then the following day, they might not necessarily remember any of it, and they might have had interest in hockey, so they will tell you stories about that. So you need to jump into their reality in their time and just go with the flow of things. We use the Brooker method, which is the acronym of VIPS. So that's valued, individuals, perspective and social. So you'll see throughout your learner guide, there will be a section of that in your learner guide that you can go through. So just to touch base on it, value. So value the person with dementia and their carers. Individuals, they must be treated as individuals. They are no different than you or I. They have just got a condition that is stopping their memory from forming new memory and retaining old memory. Perspective. Use the perspective of the person with dementia to understand their needs. And social. So the person's social environment must be positive. It needs to be a safe, secure environment because we need to ensure that they're not going to harm themselves. So interpret individualised plans and familiarise yourself with specific needs and wants of a person living with dementia. So our care plans, this is what we come back to. What we're going to do is we're going to sit down with the client that has dementia and whomever their advocate may be, and we're going to put together a care plan. This is going to entail everything from when they like to have a shower to their family history and everything in between. But this is where we're going to ask them what sort of activities they like to do. We're going to do different things that are going to show different types of behaviours and characteristics that the client may have. So all this information goes into their care plan, and that care plan is kept on file so that any support staff can have a look at it and get to know the client better. Choice of care. So dementia patients should be included in decisions about their care. We support provided to help them to make choices. So even though they've got dementia, which is a memory loss disease, which means they can't form new memories, nor can they remember some old memories, we still want to provide them with choices on a daily basis. This can come down to what type of food they'd like to eat today, how they would like to dress today, how they like to wear their hair, what activities they would like to do. We're still going to promote that independence. We're still going to promote the choice and the decision-making process, and we're just going to do it on a daily basis. Instead of knowing what this client might necessarily want all the time, we have to revisit it every day. Quality of life. So we need to ensure that these clients have enough nutrition in their life. They do tend to forget to eat or drink, so we need to monitor that side of their life. Maintaining personal care. Once again, due to the memory loss, they will forget if they've had a shower or if they've brushed their teeth or if they've washed their face. Then we're going to have a look at participating in group activities. Now, you will often find those that have been diagnosed with dementia don't particularly want to involve themselves in large group activities, but they will involve themselves with 2 or 3 others. Otherwise, they're more happy to do activities by themselves or with a diversional therapist. We want to make these activities stimulating to where they are in the dementia process. So this could be things like folding napkins, it could be things like pairing up socks, walking around the garden area. So we need to have a look at their individual stage that they're at and meet the activities according to their needs. Home care environment. So we like to keep our elderly at home as much as possible to maintain their independence and keep them in their safe, secure environment that they know is their home. But unfortunately, it gets to a certain point within their diagnosis of dementia where being at home is no longer safe. And this could be because they start to go outside at night time and then they get themselves lost and they can't remember what street they live in or what house number they're in. So it can pose a bit of a threat to harm for the client, and when it does get to that point, unfortunately, they do need to come into residential care just to maintain their safety. Now, palliative approach. So dementia is a terminal illness, you cannot cure it. And so we need to have a palliative approach because as with all illnesses and all conditions, they do get worse in time. And unfortunately with dementia, it gets to the point where the client will no longer be able to communicate verbally with you, nor will they be able to eat. So we need to have a palliative plan in place with their advocate that outlines their last final wishes so that when it does get to that point, we know exactly what they wanted to do. Identify and address a person's need for a stable and familiar environment. So a stable and familiar environment could be something from moving from their own home, their own residence, into a facility. We want to keep those familiar things around them. So this could be something like photographs or ornaments. It could be something that their grandchildren have made them, that they class special and dear to them. It could be a small piece of furniture that they will take with them into a facility, just to keep that familiarity around them. Ensuring our routine with our clients that have dementia is really important. They thrive on routine. They like to know when they're doing things and what time they're doing things. And as we have to reiterate on a daily basis with our dementia clients that, lunch is at 12 o'clock and then you're doing this at 2 o'clock and then we're having afternoon tea at 3 o'clock. They like to know that. They like to know where the clocks are kept within their environment so they can monitor their routine throughout the day. Recognise signs consistent with financial, physical and emotional abuse or neglect of person and report to an appropriate person. So unfortunately, we have some people out there that like to take advantage of those that are suffering from dementia. And this can be in the form that because of their memory loss and because they cannot form new memories, they feel that they don't have to be as careful with them. So it could be attending to their personal hygiene needs that, they're a bit rougher because they're not going to remember. It could be financially where they tell the client that a bill has been paid, but it hasn't because they're not going to remember. Or it could just come down just a straight form of neglect. Saying to the client, no, you've already had dinner and it's time to go to bed, when they haven't, and it could be 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Unfortunately, these clients tend to put so much trust in us as support workers and us as the ones that are caring for them that they tend to believe us. So if you do come across and you do suspect that any of these clients with dementia are being susceptible to any type of abuse, what you as a support worker need to do is go to your supervisor immediately and inform your supervisor of what you have observed, and then we also need to document that in the client's progress notes. If from there your supervisor chooses not to do anything about it, that is when it comes back onto you and you are to go above that supervisor's head, and this is where you go to the Director of Nursing, also known as a DON. The DON will act on this. So at the same time, we need to keep making sure that we're documenting everything that we are observing or that we are finding in a form of abuse in the client's progress notes, because it's going to come back to be able to review those progress notes later on. So to find the signs and symptoms of a dementia client that could be potentially being abused, say you come on a shift and you notice that your dementia client is unkept. They've got dirty clothing or inappropriate clothing for the weather. This I would just note down, just for myself, and I would attend to that client and ensure that they are cleaned up and are fed and are looked after for the rest of my shift. If the following day I came on and I was taking over the same support worker and I noticed the same problems, this is when I would take it to my supervisor and I would just outline to him or her what I have observed over the previous shifts. I would also follow it up by documenting it in the client's progress notes, just so that there's a written copy as well. Acting on elder abuse. So this is where you as support workers, your first point of call is to go to your supervisors. As I've said previously, if your supervisor doesn't act on it, you go to their supervisor and you go up the chain of command from there. Use verbal and non-verbal communication strategies to maximise engagement of a person with dementia. So here we need to ensure that our tone and our pitch of our voice is matching our body language. These people are highly receptive of how we communicate with them. So for their comfort and for them to start to trust you, you need to ensure that everything is matching. You're going to have a lot of different stages of dementia that you're going to be caring for throughout your clients. So what could start as an easy verbal communication with a client will eventually just end up with hand signals, short cues and phrases, or even a picture board where you could have to point out different things because they've got to that point in their illness where they can no longer communicate verbally. We want to ensure that we don't speak on their behalf. We need to get to the bottom of things. If they are becoming distressed, we need to remove them from the distressful environment that they're in, and we need to use a calming technique to be able to bring them down out of the trigger and to be able to calm them down to the point where they can explain what the trigger is and why it felt like a trigger to you. We do this by keeping calm and using monotone in our voice and maintaining eye contact. You can also use gentle touch at the shoulder and the elbow of the client, but just be careful if you go to put the arm around the client, as they can become physically aggressive from doing that. Gain cooperation and provide reassurance as appropriate by using reality orientation. So reality orientation, in a nutshell, is where we jump into their reality. We don't pull them out into what is actual reality. So if you have a client that is looking to go to catch a train because he needs to go to work and it's 1972, well then you just point, the train is up the hallway to your right. And you ask him at the end of the day, how was work? We're not going to sit there and say to them, no, it's this year currently and you're in this facility and this is what you're doing. If we do that, it's only going to cause distress. You will often find with a lot of dementia clients, and particularly in the women, that they will go to dolls and babies that are left around and they will feel like they're a new mother again. And it'll be very, very hard as a support worker for them to be able to hand over this doll or for you to take this doll to attend to their care needs. So what do? We incorporate the doll, which is their baby, into their day, and we care for both. Okay, so we just have to roll with what they are doing each day and we jump into their reality. If they're asking when their mum is going to pick them up from school, we say 15-20 minutes time. We're not going to inform them that their mother is no longer here and that she has passed away, because in their reality, they could be a 10-year-old waiting for mum to pick them up from school, and for all of a sudden they've just found out that their mother has passed away. So you can imagine the knock-on effect from being told that information. So what we do as support workers is we jump into their reality and we live in their reality until such time as they change it to something else. Reassuring words, phrases and body language. So we want to praise the small things that they do. If they're folding napkins for us, let them know how much they've helped. You know, thanks so much for doing that for me. I really needed that done and I didn't have any time to get that job done and you've done a great job. That's all that needs to be said. It's going to make them feel like they have a purpose and it makes them feel special that they were able to help someone else out. We don't ever make jokes at their expense. This is a condition that they had no idea at 40 that they were going to get. It's very confusing in the first stages of this condition. And there's even more further confusion for the loved ones that are left with what was mum or dad or grandma. So we don't make jokes at their expense. Use a range of validation strategies to relieve distress and agitation in a person. So as I mentioned earlier, validation is by letting someone know that it's okay to feel like that. It's okay to feel distressed sometimes and let me help you with it. It's okay to feel frustrated because you can't remember what your old phone number was. Let me help you try and find it. So we validate how they feel. We put ourselves in their shoes and think to ourselves, if that was me that couldn't remember that, how would I feel? And then we care accordingly. Advantages and disadvantages of validation therapy. So it's non-confrontational. No one is told off. No one is made feel bad. No one is shouted at. It's just purely there to assist and to make them feel comfortable in how they're feeling and that it's okay to feel like that. The disadvantages, it promotes lies. Unfortunately, as support workers working with dementia clients, we need to lie. And it's not something that we thrive ourselves on doing, but it is ethical to do so for the well-being of our client. If we have to tell them that their mum will pick them up in 15 to 20 minutes, yes, are we lying? Yes, we are. But the other alternative, to tell them that their mother has passed away, is not looking after the well-being of the client. We're going to put the client into stress. We're going to upset the client. So what do? We jump into their reality and we lie. Reminiscence therapy. Now this can be a little bit tricky with your dementia clients because of the memory loss. So what you need to know is, where does a dementia client usually sit at in their age? So they usually sit between 27 and 32. So we can talk about things like their childhood, where they grew up, what their mum's name was, did they have any siblings, did they have any pets, all those sorts of things they will remember. From the age of 32 onwards, it starts to get a little bit blurry and a little bit murky. And depending on when their diagnosis is, they haven't formed new memories from then. So when we want to do our reminiscence therapy, we start to hit back in those younger years, okay? Organise activities which aim to maintain independence using familiar routine and existing skills. So, as I mentioned earlier, folding napkins. You might have a client that used to work in hospitality his or her whole life. So that would be a fantastic activity for them to do. We can get them to fold cutlery into napkins, or we can get them to place the tablecloth on the table for us. You know, we can get them to fold some type of laundry, pair up some socks, button up some shirts, using all those fine motor skills that gives them a purpose, that it feels like that they're helping, and we as support workers can stand there and do it with them. And that way we can start communicating and get to know our client even further by doing these activities with them. So determining current skills and abilities. So we need to look at their general mobility. So something like someone that can walk around with a wheelie walker, yes, I can put a basket of washing there and they can walk with me while I put it away. Yet someone that has more mobility issues, I will sit at a table with them and we will start doing activities at the table. So it just depends on the mobility and what your client can and can't do, and also what they like doing. Ensure the safety and comfort of a person balanced with autonomy and risk-taking. So we have to allow our clients to take risks. Even if we can see the writing on the wall that it's not going to work out well, as long as they're not going to harm themselves, we need to allow them to take the risk. So this could be something like walking around out in the grass area. She's pretty unsteady on her feet, but the grass is pretty level. So yeah, there is a level of risk there that she can trip and fall on the soft grass that's mainly level. See how we can contextualize the risk, we can minimize it, but we're still giving them the empowerment of taking the risk. Access information about the person's reminiscence and routines with family and carers. So as I was mentioning earlier about reminiscing back in those earlier years, this is where you can use a spouse or a family member or a carer or a neighbour that has known the client for quite a lengthy period of time that can give you a bit of background information on their likes and their dislikes and their preferences and their interests, and then we can start to build some activities from there. Using their life story to plan activities. So say she was a dancer at 10. What sort of dancing did she do? What sort of music did she like to dance to? Even though she may not be able to do those dance moves now, she can still listen to the music and she can sway side to side in her chair and still enjoy it. Provide support and guidance to family carers and or significant others where appropriate. So as I mentioned earlier, there's not only frustration for the client that is going through the dementia process, but there's also that frustration that's left for the loved ones behind. This is where it's hard to see mum or dad or nan or pop changing before your eyes. They've always been this particular person that did this particular thing. And now all of a sudden they still look the same, but they don't behave the same way. They don't speak the same way. And it's really hard and it's really frustrating for those that have to see from the outside looking in at their loved one going through it. This can cause depression, it can cause anxiety, it can cause emotional exhaustion because you're constantly worried about how they're going and how their well-being is. And it can also put financial hardship onto those loved ones. Having to put modifications in place, having to put safety measures in place for that loved one that is experiencing the dementia journey is financially hard to do. And then you have to unfortunately come to the decision of whether you're going to put them into full-time care. That also occurs an expensive cost. So caring for someone with dementia, things that they might need help with. It could be anything from when they open their eyes to when they close their eyes that night. It could be only a few things like, putting out a calendar so they see what day and date it is. Having a special bowl for where they put their keys and their wallet and their phone. Or it could come down to having to bathe them, having to prepare their meals for them, having to take them to appointments, having to make appointments for them. The whole scope can be very different depending on the area of the dementia cycle they are in. Implement strategies which minimise the impact of behaviours of concern. Okay, so here we have different types of behaviours that are associated with dementia clients. As we have different types of dementia, underneath those dementia headings, we have different types of behaviours. So depending on the type of dementia that your client currently has will depend on the different types of triggers and behaviours that will come with it. What are some of them? Physical aggression, psychosis, so this is where they hallucinate or they have delusions that something or someone is there when they're not. Social withdrawal, this is because of the frustration level. So they socially withdraw themselves because they're still in that phase of the dementia at the beginning where it's frustrating and they feel like they're being judged. Verbal disruptions, this is where they will forget a particular word and they will ask what that word may be. Repetitive actions or questions. So they might ask you what time lunch is 3 or 4 times within a half-hour span. Resistance to personal care. So this is they don't know you and you're coming in and you're wanting to give them a shower and they've never seen you before. So they're going to resist it. So we need to use our deflecting techniques, we need to use our calming techniques to be able to bring the trigger down, and our voice and our pitch and our tone to be able to get them to understand that you're there to help and assist them, you're not there to hurt them. So sexually inappropriate behaviour. So unfortunately this comes along in the mid stages of the dementia cycle where they feel that you might remind them as someone as they used to know and they had a strong connection with that person, and so they become sexually inappropriate towards you. What do? You inform your supervisor. You write it down in their progress notes and you have someone with you when you go to attend to their personal care needs. Problems associated with eating. So with your dementia client, they may say they've already eaten when they haven't. What do? You still approach them with food and see if they would like to have some more. You may get another colleague to approach them in a different way to see if they would like something to eat. You may move them to a different part of the dining room and that could trigger, oh, I'm here to have some lunch. If none of that works, then we want to give them something of a milk-based drink. This is classed as a meal in the health sector, so we're still getting something into their stomach and we can tide them over until their next meal. Wandering and being intrusive into other people's personal space is a common occurrence with those that have dementia. So what do? We let them wander. As long as they're in a safe environment, then that's fine. If we do find them intruding into someone else's room or personal space, we remove them from that space. And we sit them and we set them up with something that is stimulating. It could be an activity. We could take them with us to do a task, but we don't want to keep them out of that other client's personal space, and we want to keep them busy so that they're not going to go back in there. Contribute to team discussions on support planning and review. So team discussions, this should involve carers, facility managers, supervisors, support workers, loved ones, and not only that, the client themselves. We need to keep them part of a process. So we want to keep them involved in the care process and the choices and decisions that need to be made. We aim to create a care plan that addresses and resolves all triggers. Do we get it right the first time? Not necessarily, but we do work hard at trying to resolve or minimise as many triggers as possible. Take action to minimise the likelihood and reduce the impact of behaviours. So this is where I was talking about triggers. So if we know someone, for example, is a sundowner, we're going to utilise our colleagues, we're going to utilise the lighting, and we're going to make sure that at that time of day, we keep the light the exact same throughout that room. So as the sun is going down, we're bringing the lights up to minimise that sundowning trigger. Psychosocial strategies. So as I've mentioned, validation therapy and exercise. Take them for a walk, get them using their fine motor skills to fold napkins, fold socks, put buttons together. We want to reassure them that they're doing a great job. Pet therapy is another great one. Often in facilities you'll find that they will have some facility pets. In certain areas could be a dog, a cat, a bird. So we might get them involved with some maintenance of the pet, whether it can be walk the pet around, feed the pet. And as I also mentioned, doll therapy. So you do find a lot of the women that have been diagnosed with dementia will be walking around with a pram with a doll in it. Once again, jump into their world because it'll most likely be their baby or they'll be looking after a loved one's baby. So jump into their world and you will care for not only her but that baby during the day too. Pharmaceutical strategies. So yes, we can medicate them pretty much out of any trigger, but we don't want to necessarily opt for medication at the drop of a hat every time. We want to use different strategies and techniques through our support workers to be able to try and minimise these triggers so we don't have to do it pharmaceutically. So managing signs of stress. So working with people with dementia is stressful. you're on your toes the entire time. So how do we manage it? Look, each person manages their stress in their own way, but there are things that you can do, which is talking to your supervisor or colleagues about how you're feeling. It may be that you need to be removed into a non-dementia secured area to work with other clients for a little while. You're more than welcome to go home and to discuss how you feel with your loved ones, as long as you maintain the privacy and confidentiality of your clients. Exercise, fresh air, meditation, healthy eating, getting enough sleep, all those sorts of things that you can do and put in place for managing your stress levels whilst working with people with dementia. So you will see at the end of this unit, you will have a major activity. It will take between 1 and 2 hours to complete. And as I mentioned, you'll find it at the end of your workbook. If you are having any difficulty whatsoever, please contact your trainer and he or she will take you through exactly what you need to do for that major activity. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact your trainer. That is what we're here for, is to help and support you through anything that you need. Thanks again for watching. Bye.